With week one of Swiss stage in the books at Worlds 2025, honestly, it's nice to just not be eliminated. Like, I will never forget Worlds 2022, where after that first week, it was like, yeah, we're done. We're dusted. So, like, the next week of games really don't matter. No, we've got a lot of important matchups. We got a lot of reflecting to do. But most importantly, I hope you all have gotten your 8 hours of sleep a night for the last 2 nights, because now we're back to games being on at 4 and 7 a.m. So, if you were staying up this entire time, yeah, I hope you caught up. It's not like you can store sleep anyways. And for West Coast folks, I'm sorry, y'all got blessed by it being at like 1 a.m. your time for a bit. Now it's finally time for us to get our 7 a.m. North American games. Thank God. Let's start off by talking about week one, because we have two teams that have already gone home. We have two teams that have already qualified. The qualified teams being KT and AL. The going home is Fnatic and PSG. But everybody's sitting here wondering, okay, are teams as bad as we're making them out to be, or as good as they're making them out to be, aka fraud watch, as typically happens on Power Spike? Well, I have a way to somewhat talk about this. It's not bulletproof, but it's something at least. What you're seeing here is the strength of schedule for every team in the tournament so far, based on the global power rankings as of this morning. So, for example, KT in round one as the 9th seed, or like 9th power ranked team coming into today, they played the 17 team, which is MKOI, so they get 17 points. Every team that you play against, you get the point value for that individual team. The lowest score would, in theory, mean that you have an insanely hard schedule. So, when you're looking at KT and AL, in theory, you want that score to be as low as possible, because that means that you've played as many good teams as you can and went 3-0, which is more telling of a good record. So when you look at the difference between AL and KT, KT had a cakewalk compared to AL. And that you can't do anything about that first round. The point differential is insane. And in round two, facing the 20 seed, which was TSW, that's just luck of the draw. But unfortunately, that will have an impact on you as you go on in the tournament, where you've had less stage games to prep, and now you're just going to be thrown into a quarterfinal against one of the best 8 teams in the tournament. So yeah, like, this is that thing that we talk about every year, where that team that comes out of the first week and loses in quarterfinals after 3-0ing, there's a clear reason as to why. Maybe you're not as warmed up. Maybe you just got better opponents when you look at the powerhouse teams of this tournament and you look at AL, right alongside of them. Yeah, like, it looks pretty reasonable as to why you could possibly see an upset happening here. You go to the bottom of the table, it makes sense that both Fnatic and PSG had harder opponents starting off. They are lower ranked teams, so they should hopefully play against better teams and then play against a worse team at the end, which they lose to, which is emblematic of them bombing out. Exactly why they should be upset. Yeah. But it's that middle clump where the debates really start to happen. And this whole conversation comes around the fact that 100 Thieves draws T1 and seems to have this insanely difficult tournament, which, excluding AL, because again, if you're at the top of the standings, you would expect to have harder and harder opponents. For 100 Thieves through 4 rounds of this draw to have the lowest score while also sitting in that 1-2 pool rather than the 2-1 pool, that actually is insane. T1, notably, isn't all that far behind them. T1's strength of schedule now actually gets boosted ever so slightly because they are playing 100 Thieves, who are much higher ranked. But if you go back to just that third round after facing Gen G to get knocked down to the 1-2, T1 actually had the hardest strength of schedule outside of AL, like the hardest of the teams that were not 3-0 in this tournament. So for a lot of people that are panicking about T1, just know they've had a brutal schedule up to this point. So they have a ton of time against arguably easier opponents from here on out that should help them. And they can't match up against Gen G again. They could face Homo Life in that final round. That would be a little bit interesting. That would require CTB Flying Oyster to beat Homo Life, which is entirely possible given the form that we've seen from them in this tournament. But just noting for T1 fans, you in theory got your cupcake matchup this time. Now, if you lose that cupcake matchup, that's a whole different story. That we'll deal with at the time comes, but there's no sense worrying about it right now. We'll be previewing the Flyquest versus G2 matchup here soon, but it is interesting to note their strength of schedule is drastically different. Like, Flyquest is coming into this facing much easier opponents, G2 having warmed up a lot more. Now, the big thing with G2 is it's debatable whether BLG actually carries that 7 seed, because this is where like the nuance of this chart comes in, like obviously most of us won't consider BLG a top 7 team at this tournament so far. They've played much worse. They've lost games to both G2 and 100 Thieves. But by nature of the global power rankings and it taking much more than just a few best of ones for that to skew their ranking that far down, it's going to look like G2 had a much harder schedule when, in hindsight, if G2 does lose the Flyquest, you look at this saying like, yeah, that BLG number does stand out as an outlier. So again, there's a lot of nuance to like the way I'm doing this, but we don't really have any other better system currently other than the global power rankings for me to base this on, unless you like get a panel and committee to decide where teams rank, and that's just too much for this. If I had to rank the regions though, like if we're just putting like a general power ranking of the 5 major regions so far, it would actually be interesting to note that I do think that at first is China right now. Even though BLG is playing bad, the top 2 of China in top and AL are playing incredibly well. And granted that they come with the benefit of only having 3 teams versus 4 from Korea, and you have a team that can drag them down like T1, but there also was a lot of cannibalization from the LCK. I just think the LPL in general and Swiss stage is continuing to show that, yeah, they're pretty damn good at the Swiss stage of this tournament. At number 2, I put the LCK not too far behind them. I still think as of right now, we are set to get all 7 teams out pending the draw of the next round, which could be oh boy, things could get really interesting in the next round. In third, I actually would put the LTA. I legitimately think they're performing much better than expectations. And even though you look at CTBC as like the team that was 2-0, had a chance of getting out, nearly beat AL, below that, it is pretty weak. Whereas when you look at the LTA, I think, yes, VKS, like there's some arguments to have of them looking definitely a little bit weak. 100 Thieves has surpassed expectations. Flyquest are exactly where you would expect them to be. There's really no upsets or anybody there. And also, notably, China and North America, or well, the LTA, North America and Brazil, are the only 2 regions that have not lost a team yet in this tournament. I mean, granted, Europe got an unlucky draw, but let's not lie here and say the Fnatics look great in this tournament regardless. So I would actually put the LCP at 4th and Europe in 5th, which I know might piss off some Europeans, but like I think that's fair, at least as of right now, that obviously being subject to change as we go through week 2 of this particular tournament, where week 2, Europe, okay, maybe not Swiss stage, but previously Europe used to have a really good track record in week 2. We'll see how that translates this year. As of late, it's been North America who's had that much better week 2, or at least that first 2-1 series, either against ourselves or against Europe, to move on. Overall, just some really interesting games, some really interesting series, and it's really hard to figure out, other than AL, who looks like a favorite in this tournament. I mean, Gen G obviously could bounce back, but that initial loss in the first few rounds, granted against a tough opponent, you just sit there as like, from the tournament favorites? Really? Okay, fine. But they have more than enough time to bounce back. They should be fine. I'm still holding pretty solid to the idea that we could possibly get 2 Western teams, or 2 Western and LCP teams out. CTB looks great. I do want to touch briefly before we preview the matchups on the Fnatic coaching drama. If you don't know what this is, I believe this guy is a positional coach for Fnatic. He's obviously not the head coach. That would be Grabs. And I can't imagine a world where you lose at Worlds and immediately the coach comes out and be like, not everybody was trying 100%. Like, even if that is true, which it very well could be, you still don't say it. Like, you still go into the off. I mean, clearly, to me, this is like scorched earth. Like, he knows that he's gone. He knows that he ain't going to be there next year. So he's just saying this shit to get it out there. I think it screws you for your next job, personally. Like, you got to understand the politics of the situation and be able to say the right or wrong things. And, like, as a coach, especially, just take onus for yourself and promise that you'll look better next time. And, if you want to lash out a little bit, like, I don't know. I just don't think saying that people didn't give it their all without, like, either calling out who, like, if you're going to do that, you got to go fully into the pond or not at all. And the fact that he's just doing this is just wild, especially when the other 2 coaches are being very diplomatic at the moment, even if we all know that Fnatic is about to blow the hell up this offseason. So, I don't know. I don't know what things look like for them. I really couldn't care less, honestly. Watching Fnatic implode every single year at Worlds and then go through the same cycle over and over again is honestly massively hilarious. So I'm not necessarily going to wish them any better. Sorry. Let's get into the matchups. I've previewed this a little bit on TikTok and a little bit on YouTube Shorts here. If you're not checking out my short form content and you enjoy that type of stuff, be sure to do so. You might find some quick digestible stuff that you like. But we touched on the strength of schedule for both T1 and 100 Thieves. Everybody has this perception that 100 Thieves is getting blasted right now. Not enough people are realizing that T1 was as well up until this point, or if they did, they kind of like wrote it off because it's T1. They're supposed to win these. They're supposed to be great. It's like they are the 4th seed coming into this. Okay, they are playing a much harder strength of schedule than you would expect for the 4th seed of the LCK, who should in theory be playing against like the top seeds of North America, assuming that that's what happens here. And instead, this is the first cupcake matchup, quote unquote, that they get. And Owner being sick does take a pretty big chunk into this for me. Like if he's not able to get healthy over the next few days before their series, I would look at this and be like, yeah, there's potential. If River and Quid are absolutely on their game and Owner's not feeling the greatest and Faker's not fully there as well, yeah, like Dokla basically is exactly what Doran is for T1 for 100 Thieves. So I think that's, even though Doran obviously has a much higher skill floor than Dokla does, maybe Dokla has a good game. I mean, he's played well in this tournament so far, so there's no reason to say that he couldn't. And then bot lane, well, I mean, that's one where if they draft appropriately for T1, it probably should be a blowout. If you don't, then you do give 100 Thieves an option to get into this. Like I'm sitting here kind of coping and saying that, there is a clear world that I see where 100 Thieves can pull off this upset. Does that make it possible? No, we've never beaten T1 in a best of series ever for North America. Why in the world would 100 Thieves, this team who's disbanding, full of quote unquote misfits with Dokla, with River, who's retiring after this year, Quid obviously being like the superstar, but then FBI, who was kind of a journeyman for a bit, Ayla, who everybody wrote off. Like, why would this squad of all squads be the one that finally beats T1, and not only beats T1, knocks them out of Worlds for the first time ever in groups/Swiss? Like, that's insane. This is David versus Goliath from a narrative point of view to a level that we've never seen before. Like, there's no world where 100 Thieves should stand a chance, but yet here we are, and I could see it happening. And that's blind faith from my part, but I don't care. More than anything, like if you're a 100 Thieves fan like me, like you're just going to be happy that like this is how it potentially ends if it does. If we win, oh God, it would be the most 100 Thieves thing ever to beat T1 and then lose to like, I don't know, TSW, who pulls off an upset, or VKS pulls off an upset. We lose to them in the next round. That would be the most 100 Thieves poetic thing in the world. But in general, like for this to be our last dance, and if we do go out at the hands of Faker and T1 at Worlds, that's poetic. What more can you say? Other than Dokla and everybody else has done a great job of building up their brands this Worlds to be able to get a slot on a starting squad next year. Like if Dokla's not starting for a team in the LCS next year, I'm mind blown. He might be the most popular player at Worlds outside of Faker right now, at least in China. Like, think about that. That's wild. My man's just posting 40-second like dry humor skits every day, shirtless, and that's it. When I told you all it does not take much for content to take off for players like months ago, this is what I meant. And this is like the perfect alignment of everything over the last few months, starting with like the Blippo drama to him coming in and playing well, to just embracing the moment fully and understanding like what you need to do to get the stuff to work on social media, and clearly having like a decent eye for trends, especially with one of the more recent videos that he did. Yeah, like he's got it. He absolutely gets it, and I hope more people take his lead and don't just copy. All right, Golden Glue, I see you trying to just replicate his formula. You got to find your own, brother. But I respect it. I respect the attempt and the try. And speaking of tries, I do think 100 Thieves will try their best. And I do think they will get a game, hopefully. 2-1, T1. As much as I'm going to trash talk over the next few days, like that's my honest prediction. I think anybody with a shred of common sense would say that. But on game day, I'm going 100 Thieves 2-1 all day. Come on. As for Flyquest versus G2, man, North America versus Europe at Worlds in a qualification stage to get out and make sure that you have a team going to Swiss. I don't want to scare Europeans, but let me just, bad memories? No? Losing to a team that was way worse than what Flyquest is now. NRG had a hope and a dream. Flyquest has genuine players that, Azale did an interview where he said the only lane that I could see G2 having an advantage is mid lane because of caps. And for the most part, I do agree with them. I think people like assume like, oh no, BB's great. It's like, dude, we have seen Bwipo beat the shit out of Broken Blade for like 6 years now. I don't know why people think that this is magically going to be different just because Broken Blade is suddenly like playing a little bit better. I don't know why. It's just never fully translated. Jungle, if you do not pick Inspired, you are, what do I even say? Come on. And then the bot lane, like if you're asking me to pick an ADC that I trust in mid to late game fights, yeah, it's going to be Masu, and Busio's way, way better. I mean, come on. Come on. The only area where I would give Hansama the advantage is especially those early games. I think that's where he really succeeds. Like early game, Hansama, 100%. The second you get to 20 minutes, if it's anywhere near an even state, no, give me Masu all day. I know Europe is saying, hey, this isn't MSI, like where it was a quick 3-0. Like this is going to be different. They are much better. I do think Flyquest is in a little bit worse form than they were in spring based on the format and just things that they had to go through and the Whippo drama and all this. Like I'm not disagreeing with that, but I don't think it's enough to give Europe an advantage here. I'd like give them even more than a game at this point. I think it is going to be Flyquest 3 wanting G2, but I do think it will be closer than this prior series that we've seen both from NRG versus G2 at Worlds, but also earlier this year where we got to see these two match up. Sorry, Europe. If you want to find your copium, your hopium, and like your person that's going to be unbiased and objective on this, it ain't going to be me. Sorry. I do hope you win your next round, as long as it's not against 100 Thieves and 100 Thieves pulls off the upset against T1. I do hope you win your next round because I would like to see a European team make it to quarterfinals because I think it makes the rivalry more interesting. I'm not one of those people that like when we're not playing each other, I'm like I will pull for the West. I know there are many fans from North America that will not cheer for Europe whenever Europe and NA aren't playing together. Personally, I see it as like a West versus the East type thing. I think we all raise each other's ships whenever we're able to stand up to the big two in the LPL and the LCK. I wouldn't put the LCP with us on that front because they get the chance to scrim against them. It's just different, culturally different as well. Like it's not the same. We are two leagues that speak pretty much the same language, even though obviously Europeans know way more languages than just English. We have a lot more in common on that front. We can relate to each other a lot better. So your wins are my win as long as you're not playing us. And this weekend, you're going to get beat by us. If not, my mentions are going to be equally as tragic as whenever we lost to Brazil. Just as bad. I think I've gone on long enough. If you want breakdowns of the other matches, be sure to check out some of the other content creators in the space. Jat has been doing JLXP. The Dive has a pretty long video on things. There's a ton of other places that you can go. I want to keep this close to 20 minutes if I can, just so it's a little bit more digestible and like really hyper focused on North America specifically. We do also have 2 LCS headlines that I have to cover in this video because I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk about them a little bit later, and roster mania is going to pick up, so we'll have a bunch of other things going on. First and foremost, Bakery is no longer the general manager of Dignitas. Before you cheer, I'll finish that in a second, but Jonathan, who was with NRG, he went on Hotline League, I believe, like 2 years ago after he got either released or fired or NRG dissolved. I don't remember what exactly were the circumstances around that, but either way, yeah, he's going to be the GM of Dignitas, which I think is a massive upgrade, like a massive change. Great for Dig, so that hopefully people can come in and realize that, yeah, there's somebody that can actually build a program here because he's done that elsewhere. My issue is Bakery is still within the organization and got promoted. I would get if you get like a side grade position elsewhere, maybe even a downgrade within the organal structure, but getting promoted and moving up the food chain at Dig feels really weird to me whenever you are one of the more vilified people in the space. Players don't like people will see that he's still involved with this org, even if Jonathan's there, and be a little bit wary because it's like, okay, is Jonathan going to be gone in a few weeks or like in a split if things don't work well to start? Like, it's not like he's not in a position of power to make choices here. So I'm a little bit confused by this move from Dignitas, where it's like you have this one person coming in that I do have faith to possibly rebound your franchise. Because let's be honest, you got a lot of damage control to do with Dignitas. You are a laughing stock of this league. You are the new Immortals. You are the worst team that we have here. Like DSG might have less of a budget, but like, let's be honest, it's freaking Dignitas. You still can't search their name without it being a suicide prevention thing. Like, you've got mountains to overcome with this brand. And Jonathan is somebody that I genuinely believe can, but will he be able to do so? I don't know. Time will tell. But I do like him, and I do like that move. And the second thing I'll bring up is that Sentinels has made their first move in trying to attract League of Legends fans. They had a very, very good 10-minute video on like the history of Phoenix 1 and being Sentinels, and like how the whole League of Legends program for them went prior to this moment right now. And I think it's a good watch for those of you that might be looking for a new team for next year. I know I'm going to have my eyes on literally every single organization's content. And I know people are going to be like, oh, are you showing favoritism to the Sentinels? No, I'm just giving everybody their fair chance. And I think it's a really good piece of content. The same way I've shouted out Team Liquid, because Team Liquid had a fantastic video for finals that used Ben, who's a comedian and part of the org. He did a great job with the video. Made me cackle out loud with some of the Whippo jokes that they were able to make, which they did not hold back in this video at all when talking to the community at finals. Fantastic. But I think there's going to be a real battle for the remaining fans, especially for 100 Thieves fans that are, you know, down and out. Like, there are going to be a lot of them that don't want to go to Sentinels. There are going to be a lot that don't want to go to TL. Like, these orgs need to put in the work to convince fans to be a fan of your org. And small things like this, like even just a 10-minute YouTube video starting off telling your history, like well before roster building even begins, is pretty massive. And Sentinels were very upfront when they said, look, I've got a 2-year plan to try and make international play. This year upcoming is like not, I mean, it doesn't sound like the greatest thing in the world, but I think it's a realistic expectation to set that, like, yeah, we got to get our name out there. We got to show what we're worth. And within 2 years, let us get into that form. To them, we'll hopefully make it to Worlds, into an international tournament. So I think that's a fair timeline. And I like the honesty and respect that from the jump. Will that net them fans? Don't know. Like, you got to create a lot of content. If you are following the Shopify path of like trying to get your feet wet in that first year, this is a little bit different than just getting your feet wet like Shopify did. You got to put stuff out there to convince people to watch you, period. Because we saw what happened with Shopify, and they just unfortunately did not hit the ground running. But good first steps for them. Good content around. I'll be keeping track of all of it over the next few weeks, especially as we hit roster mania. And not only players are looking for homes, but so are fans. So with that, games 7 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday for North America. And obviously, if Flyquest lose on Wednesday, they'll play on Saturday. But I'll be here after each and every day that North America plays to talk about it all, break it down. No spoilers on the thumbnails and titles as always, but you can best believe I'll be here. See you around.